Every day, we look up at the sky and figure it's just empty blue space. Turns out there's actually a massive, multi-layered shield hanging over our heads. It protects us from outer space, but it's also fully capable of killing anyone who climbs too high inside it. To show you how the whole thing works, I am stepping into this elevator and hitting the one button with an arrow pointing up. The shaft on this elevator ends somewhere around 10,000 kilometers above the ground, and I'm riding it all the way to the top. Along the way, the doors will open on every single layer of the atmosphere, and you and I are going to check out the view together. I'll show you what this insane altitude actually compares to, and what your odds of surviving out there really look like. Let's roll.
While the elevator picks up speed, let me walk you through the route. Earth is wrapped in a thin film of gas. If you shrank our planet down to the size of an ordinary apple, this whole massive atmosphere would end up thinner than the peel. That paper-thin, invisible layer is the only thing standing between you and certain death. It's the only reason you're not boiling, freezing, or suffocating right now. We're about to punch straight through this shield. Every layer out there has its own insane temperature record and its own unique way of taking apart the fragile human body. As for me, I've got no flesh and no lungs in here, so none of this can touch me. Which means I get to walk you through every gruesome detail.
First stop, the Troposphere. It runs from ground level up to about 12 kilometers. This is where everything we call weather actually lives. Rain, snow, hurricanes, and those pretty fluffy clouds. Let's knock out a question a lot of people wonder about right away. Why can't a helicopter just keep its tank full and fly straight up into space? The answer has nothing to do with fuel. A helicopter's blades work exactly like oars in a boat. They need something dense to push against. The higher you climb, the thinner and emptier the air around you gets. At a certain altitude, the blades stop pushing against anything at all and start chopping at thin air instead. There's nothing left to grip, and the whole heavy machine just starts dropping.
Now let's talk about your odds down here. Commercial jets cruise right near the ceiling of the troposphere. If I opened these elevator doors at that altitude right now, you'd be looking at minus 60 degrees and a brutal shortage of oxygen. That's exactly why airplane cabins have to be sealed airtight and pumped full of pressurized air. The summit of Mount Everest also pokes out right under the roof of this layer, and climbers only survive up there thanks to oxygen tanks. The verdict for the troposphere is simple. At the very top of this floor, without extreme cold weather gear and a solid oxygen mask, you'll black out in about 30 seconds and turn into a block of ice shortly after.
We keep climbing, and the next stop is the Stratosphere, stretching out to roughly 50 kilometers. This is where the famous ozone layer lives. It works like a giant sunscreen for the entire planet, greedily soaking up the sun's most aggressive rays. Because of that process, temperature here behaves in a completely backwards way. If we were freezing on the last floor, up here, it actually gets warmer the higher you go. Regular aircraft have absolutely no business being up this high. This is weather balloon territory, and the territory of some genuinely fearless people. The record-breaking high-altitude skydives were launched from right around here. A person in a pressure suit simply steps out into nothing and free falls like a stone for several minutes, waiting for the air below to get thick enough for the parachute to finally open.
Now, about your own chances. If I pushed you out here with zero protection, suffocating wouldn't even have time to happen. Pressure is so close to nothing that any exposed liquid starts boiling at ordinary body temperature. Your saliva, your tears, the moisture in your lungs, all of it would literally boil while staying ice cold. The blood in your veins would get a temporary reprieve from your body's own internal pressure, but that's not exactly comforting. A regular oxygen mask isn't going to cut it here. Survival requires a full-blown pressure suit, one that clamps tight around your body and artificially maintains that pressure for you. Without it, the laws of physics take you apart fast, and they don't go easy on you. Next stop, the Mesosphere, up to 85 kilometers. Back on the ground, 85 kilometers is roughly an hour and a half of easy highway driving between two neighboring towns. But the conditions outside this window are anything but a scenic drive. This is the coldest floor in the entire building, where temperatures drop below -90. The Mesosphere is basically a dead zone for technology. The air's already too thin for planes or high-altitude balloons, but it's still too thick for orbiting satellites, which would instantly overheat and burn up from friction if they tried to sit here. That's why rockets launching into orbit punch through this layer as fast as possible and try not to linger.
On the plus side, this altitude works brilliantly as the planet's own personal crematorium. Space rocks and chunks of ice slam into this layer at insane speeds, flare up, and burn to nothing. That romantic shooting star people wish on in the night sky is really just a piece of space junk getting incinerated in the mesosphere in real time. Surviving a stroll through the mesosphere requires a full heavy-duty suit with an active internal heating system. Without one, you'd turn into a suffocating, boiling ice cube faster than you could blink. The next stop stretches across several hundred kilometers all by itself. The Thermosphere starts around 85 kilometers up and runs all the way to 600. This is where the Kármán line sits, the unofficial boundary where outer space is considered to officially begin. And just above it, the International Space Station orbits the Earth. This is also where the Northern Lights are born. And here's the most absurd part of this whole ride. Air temperature here can climb to 2,000 degrees, making this technically the hottest layer of the entire atmosphere. But if I let you out here with no suit, you wouldn't burn, you'd freeze. There are so few air molecules floating around that all that heat has nothing to actually transfer it to your body, so it just stays a number on a gauge instead of a feeling on your skin. That said, you'd only freeze if you stayed in the shade. Step into direct sunlight and you'd get instantly fried by cosmic radiation because there's no protective dome left above you anymore. No aircraft on Earth reaches this high. Your only hope of surviving out here is a genuine heavy-duty suit with thick radiation shielding and a serious climate control system. The doors open on the final floor. This is the Exosphere. It runs from 600 all the way out to 10,000 kilometers. The floor number sign is basically wiped clean at this point because there's no way to draw a clear line between this layer and deep space anymore. The atmosphere is slowly dissolving into interplanetary emptiness. Gas particles are so sparse out here that individual molecules can travel hundreds of kilometers without ever colliding with each other. This is exactly why high-orbit satellites like to park themselves on this floor. Unlike the lower layers, where gas still tries to drag on spacecraft, resistance here drops to basically zero. Toss a chunk of metal up to this altitude and it'll loop around for decades without a single bump slowing it down. As for your own survival odds out here, the rules of the game don't really change anymore. Radiation, total vacuum, instant death without a heavy-duty suit. The only real difference is that Earth now looks like a pretty blue marble hanging in black infinity, rather than a place you could actually breathe without a helmet. Our elevator has arrived. I just took you from the air the entire planet breathes all the way to almost nothing, the point where the whole idea of an atmosphere runs out. So next time a passenger jet outside your window looks like the absolute pinnacle of engineering soaring impossibly high, remember, it barely scratched the ceiling of floor 1 out of 5. The real top button on this elevator sits way, way further up. This has been Lampman. Appreciate your oxygen. At least down on the ground floor, you don't have to carry it around on your back.